And it says, and it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son,
Behold.
Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. So here we have Abraham, and God's putting him through a test.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a test that he was going to give his only son, his only promised son. This son, he has two sons, but this, in God's eyes, this was the only promised son. And the Bible says, whom he loved.
Typical
Now, this-
dad, wasn't he?
This was a son that, if you have sons or daughter, you loved it.
Oh, yeah. Part of it.
It's personal. And besides that, it was promised to him. God told him that through his seed, many nations would come. That he was going to be blessed through his seed. And now, God turns around and puts a test before him and wants him to offer it up for a burnt offering. I couldn't imagine being asked that. But God did. And it just so happened to come. God has his good timing, because this was right after Hagar had been dismissed with the other son. So this is the only son he had that was with him. And God told him, take him and offer him up. Now Moriah wasn't close. It was a 50-mile shot. So it was going to take a while. And it says, and Abram rose up early the morning. Abraham didn't hesitate.
He said, here I am.
Here I am. But I'll read the rest of it. He said, and Abraham rose up early in the morning and saddled his ass and took two of his young men with him and Isaac his son and clave the wood for the burnt offering and rose up and went into the place which God had told him. He didn't want time. I can imagine if God told you that and you sat on it, what's going to happen? The devil's going to come and he's going to try to talk to you. He's going to try to diverse you. He's going to try to sway you from doing what God had told you. Time, when God tells you to do something, you need to do it. Because if you let it go, what's going to happen? You're not going to, more cases than none, then you're not going to do it. Because the devil's going to, he'll whitewash it, he'll water it down to the point where you'll think to yourself, it wouldn't have done no good. We do it with our testimonies. God tells us to stand up and give our testimony, and we can't even do that. And then we'll say, well, we'll do it this evening when I come back. And then when you come back that evening, the service might not be leading you or feel right or to go with your testimony. And then you'll say, well, I'll do it another time when God tells me. That time had passed. God wanted you to act on that time, on that specific moment for somebody's benefit, whether you knew it or not. He told Abraham he needed him to go. Abraham woke up the next morning and he left and he done what his task was going to be. And I put myself in his position. I'm not sticking around and tell Mama.
Mm-hmm.
He ain't going to tell Sarah. Sarah's past record wasn't like Abram's. She is in her faith was weak. She doubted God numerous times.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't going to stand up and say, well, honey, God's told me to do that. Well, what was she to do? You're not taking my baby.
That's
You're
right.
not going to kill him. God gave it to us, and he said he's going to do that. That's not of him. She'd have turned him around, and he wouldn't have known which way to go. His faith was strong, and hers was weak. A lot of times when we get married, one one is optimistic, one is pessimistic. But together you collaborate and you work for the better good. But sometimes when God tells you to speak, he acted and he was gone. He woke up the next morning early and he left. He knew that he had a job to do, and he wasn't going to let nothing or his wife or some sort of situation to defer him from that. It says, then on the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said unto his young men, abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come again unto you. Well, as you read here, he still ain't told Isaac. Isaac don't know. He don't have the faintest. That he wouldn't even tell the men. I believe if he'd have told them, they thought he would be crazy.
Yeah.
He couldn't tell nobody. Because why? They would defer his actions, what he was going to do. They would probably try to talk to him, and they'd say, listen here, old man, you're too old. You're getting lost in your thoughts. Isaac might not would have, if he'd have told Isaac at the camp at home and said, listen, son, this is what God's told me to do, that gave Isaac 3 days to ponder in his head. Dad's lost it. He's over 100-some years old. He ain't going to do it to me. So Abram carried this burden with him the whole time. And he went to the place where God had told him. And Moriah, on Mount Moriah, they said it was really close to probably the mountain that Solomon built his temple in Jerusalem. So if that's that close, when you're standing on Mount Moriah, that you can look and probably find
Calvary.
Mount Calvary. 2 different instances, same scenario, the same struggle, the same sacrifice in the same area. If God don't have something, he works in mysterious ways, but when you look at it, it's so obvious. They could have been on Mount Calvary for all we know. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together. So here's Isaac carrying that wood on his back. Don't that remind you of Jesus?
Come on.
Carrying that cross on his back.
Yeah.
Same scenario. But you can have an altar. You can have the wood. You can have the fire.
You got to carry the cross.
But if you don't have that lamb, you have nothing. As a person and as a Christians, you got to have it all. We may act like we're Christians. If you're a sinner, you can act like you're doing this. You can have an altar. You can have everything in the world. But if you don't have Jesus, you're missing it. You don't have it. So here's Isaac. He puts that wood on his back and has Isaac carry that wood up that mountain. And it says, and Isaac spake unto Abram his father and said, my father. And he said, here am I, my son. And he said, behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, my son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. Here's Isaac. He's that close. He still don't know it's him. But he's probably got a little gut feeling that this don't feel right. So he starts questioning his daddy. Where's the lamb? I know what it looks like. He saw his dad do this hundreds of times, probably. Abraham, no matter where he went, what did he do? He built an altar, he laid the wood, and he gave an offering. Even Hagar, the first time that they casted her out, what did she say to him when the angel of the Lord came to him? She went back to Abram. It was Abram then. She said, what did she say to him? I saw your God. Abram, we forget. We think he travels around this little tent and everything. He had enough men that he went to battle and won.
An army.
So he had a lot of people, and a lot of people looked to Abraham. They saw him wherever he went. He built that altar, he laid the wood, and he sacrificed the lamb. She saw it. Hagar saw it. She was an Egyptian. She didn't know his God. She probably worshipped his God. There was probably over 200 or 300 people there in his caravan. But she said, she went back to him and said, I saw your God.
Oh, you're getting on it, Toby.
I saw your God. He had faith. And he knew that everywhere he went, God was faithful to him. So here he found himself. He didn't hesitate. He found himself going up this mountain with his son. And they came to a place which God had told him of. And Abram built an altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar upon the wood. You can't tell me 100-some-year-old man. Bray is 16. Bray will take a 100-some-year-old man. And he's not a man yet. But when it came to life and death, he would take him. Here you have Isaac, which is a young lad. He's not that young. If he really didn't want to, he could have not done it.
He wasn't no baby.
Nuh-uh. So here's Isaac giving up himself. He's trusting in his dad and his God. Because he saw Daddy. It's in the pudding. He saw Daddy worship God. He's seen the faithfulness and the just that God has shed on their family. But he trusted in his father, said, God will provide. He even went to as far as letting his dad tie him up and laid him on that altar, still thinking God's going to provide. But at the same time, I got to say that Abraham had so much faith that he thought that he knew the promises that God gave him. He knew that from his seed, which is Isaac, he's way over 100 now, and this is it. This is the promise. This is my legacy that God's was going to go through him. And now he's wanting to kill him. He believed that probably if he killed him, that he'd raise him from the dead. That no matter whether I do it or not, somehow, some way, God was going to work his promises through him.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing he had. He put everything he had in God. Everything. And it's still the same today. We put everything we have in Jesus. He done the same walk on Calvary. He shed his blood for us. Just like he was asking Abraham to do with his son. Sometimes I think God was just testing to say, we're getting close, son. We're getting close to when you're going to have to go. And he probably, and this is just me imagine. He said, do you still think they're worthy? Because he tested Abram. Abram was probably in a position now to where he felt good about himself. All this time he has struggled about having a son. Now he's got his son, and his son he's older. He's probably getting close to getting a wife. He was going to start seeing things flourish, and he's probably at ease.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When we're at ease is when God a lot of times tests us. And this is what this was. In the very first verse, it was a test. Through these tests, it's a test of our faith. We can look back on our own lives, or might be going through one right now, to where we think it's all right, and then all of a sudden, we get these burdens and tests that we have to what? We have to rely on Jesus for all of it. Like you don't see no way out, but you gotta believe and put your burdens on him, because that's the only way you feel like you're going to get out.
Yep.
And he's just to be there, just like he was for Abraham. He wasn't going to let Abraham kill him, but he wanted to see how far Abraham could go. How much faith do you put in me? It says, and Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. So they were testing, see how far Abraham would go. And Abraham went the whole way, because he had not a shadow of a doubt that God was not a liar. He cannot lie. And that he was going to fulfill his promise. And that whether he had to slay his son or whatever, he thought, he thought God would probably bring him from the dead. If you study the Bible, that's what he was thinking.
That's what Hebrews says.
So, he put all his faith. And that's what he wants us to do. We got to give it all to him. Give everything to him. Because he's justified to be there. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And when you sacrifice a lamb or a ram, it had to be perfect. There wasn't a blemish on it. And you notice that it was caught by the horns, not by because if it was in a thicket, what would happen? It'd get pricked. It wouldn't be perfect. But it was caught by the horns.
Yeah.
So
pure.
God was keeping his promise. See, and God, these were traditions set way back. This was law. So God's even keeping his own law. Like, I'll provide you one, and I'm providing you a perfect ram. Because he knew one day he was going to give his perfect lamb. He knew that when he was doing this with Abraham, that Jesus was beside of him, and that he was going to have to give him up, just like Abraham. He probably looked at man and said, I wonder if man can do what I do. Can man give up his only son? Can man let it go and use him as a sacrifice that I'm going to do? And it probably gave joy to God, knowing that there was a man on this earth that loved him so much and put his faith in him so much, because he knew what he was going to have to do. He said that he's doing that. He's doing the same thing I'm going to do. I bet when Abraham got to heaven, I can imagine God just giving him a hug, like, you're the only man who knows what I went through or got close enough. You didn't have to go through it, but you did it.
Yeah.
I know what I had to do. Jesus knew what he had to do for you. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah-Jireh, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. Jehovah-Jireh means the Lord provides. And he does provide.
Amen.
He is just, and whatever you're going through, he'll provide. You got to lean on him, you got to trust on him, and you got to have the faith to give it all to him.
Amen.
But like I said before, if you're a Christian or a sinner, you can have the altar, you can have the wood, you can have the fire, but you've got to have a lamb.
Amen.
You gotta have Jesus. With Jesus, all things are possible. And that's my lesson today.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Fantastic.